Every time that there's a new season on the horizon, we as spectators are always dealt a shocking retirement announcement or two. However, more often than not, there's usually some foresight, and due to age, injuries, family situations, etc., players make that ultimate choice to hang up the skates for good. In this video, we're going to discuss 4 different situations involving players who may not have a choice when it comes to retirement due to injuries. And with that, here are 4 players whose careers just might be killed by injuries. What once began as a son simply idolizing his father in goalie pads turned a dream into reality for Braden Holtby. And after he was able to assume the same position on the same team as his father Greg, the goaltender's sights were then set on the NHL. As most of us know, what began as a 4th overall draft selection with the Caps ended in a legacy formed in net by the Saskatchewan native. And after winning the Vezina in 2016, Holtby helped his longtime team capture its first Stanley Cup in franchise history. But unfortunately, the fairy tale scenario was cut short by reality in 2020. As Washington succumbed to cap restraints, they were forced to let Holtby walk in free agency. Unsurprisingly though, he was able to secure a 2-year deal with Vancouver thereafter. Well, in most aspects anyways, it's fair to say that Vancouver and Holtby didn't mix well. And after having the worst season out of his entire career, in a .889 save percentage in 21 games to prove it, the netminder's contract was then bought out. However, the Dallas Stars saw some promise in signing Holtby to a 1-year deal. Considering his struggles in BC, Holtby really began to bounce back in the Lone Star State. Along with Jake Ottinger, Holtby helped formulate a decent tandem and finished his season with a .921 save percentage and a 2.78 goals against average. But this roller coaster ride is currently riding on a low as far as Holtby's career is concerned. While dealing with a lower body injury throughout, Holtby only made 3 appearances between the span of late January to early March, the last of which was on March 4th, where he was able to stop 39 out of 42 shots taken by Winnipeg. And after trying to return to practice, according to the Dallas Daily News, Holtby was only able to withstand 10 minutes on ice before having to head off due to injury. At this point in time, many are unsure if Holtby will ever return to game action. Among them is NHL insider Frank Saravalli, who says, "Braden Holtby is unlikely to play next season. His career may be over," Saravalli indicated. Currently an unrestricted free agent, it will be interesting to see how this all plays out. One thing's for certain though, even if he has to retire with a Vezina and Stanley Cup to his name, Holtby has nothing to hang his head about. By all respects, Ryan Ellis came into the NHL with quite the resume, as he was just the 3rd defenseman in OHL history to record 300 points or more, with 314 throughout his junior career. This of course prompted Nashville to select Ellis 11th overall in 2009. For many years, the Predators were mostly known for their structurally sound back end that featured Shea Weber, Roman Josi, Matthias Ekholm, and Ellis himself. Well, after recording 30 or more points in 4 different instances for the Preds, Ellis was traded to the Flyers in the offseason of last year. By all accounts, at the time, this was considered a move in the right direction for GM Chuck Fletcher and the team. The optimistic idea was that a slew of high-profile signings and trades could inevitably get Philly where it needed to be. Unfortunately though, despite recruiting Cam Atkinson, Rasmus Ristolainen, and Ellis himself, it didn't help the Flyers' case one bit, and many have held true to believing that the biggest reason for the disappointment felt in Philly had to do with the absence of Ellis last campaign, as a pelvic injury that Ellis suffered kept him out of commission for all but 4 games last season. In a couple articles by NBC Sports, we learned that the injury and the rehab itself are being considered multi-layered. Even though he has been partaking in off-ice training sessions this summer, the return date for Ellis is still a mystery. Recently appointed head coach John Tortorella also had nothing but question marks when interviewed himself. "I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say he's going to be ready to go. I'm not sure. I don't think he's sure," Tort said. Currently on injury reserve, Ellis could be sidelined yet again this season, and one would imagine that if that's the case, it could force him to eventually call it quits for good. For most of us that are hockey-centric and are aware of what the goaltending position demands, the hips are a routine casualty that seem to give out more than anything. And for Jonathan Bernier, after spending over a decade between the pipes at the NHL level, the wear and tear has come to a head. Bernier, who was brought in from Detroit last off-season, made his way to New Jersey with some lingering issues. In an article, which I'll reference down below, Devils head coach Lindy Ruff revealed in December that Bernier had been dealing with this same issue since the start of the 2021-2022 campaign. And after about a month since he'd been placed on injury reserve, Bernier underwent hip surgery thereafter, which ended his season completely. Recently, after the Devils acquired Vitek Vanacek, the assumption was that GM Tom Fitzgerald felt that Bernier was a no-go for this coming October. According to an article from ESPN that was recently published, Bernier's career from the outside seems to be in jeopardy. Currently on injury reserve, the goaltender has one final year remaining on his 2-year, $8.25 million contract, as he's set to become a UFA next offseason. Last season, the Washington Capitals honored their best center that the franchise has ever seen. And while fans around Backstrom celebrated upon the Caps' win against the New Jersey Devils, they had no idea they may not be seeing him in action in the next season at all. In mid-June, after Washington's early playoff exit, it was then announced that Backstrom had underwent hip resurfacing surgery. According to Sportsnet, following the surgery, Backstrom appeared to be unsure as to when or if his career would continue. Backstrom, who has now had 2 hip surgeries, is and will be undergoing a lengthy rehab process. What we do know about hip resurfacing surgery, however, is that it does give more room for hope, since unlike hip replacement surgery, it gives athletes more of a chance to compete after recovery. However, on the other side of the argument is the fact that this was the same surgery that Ryan Kesler had after he played his last NHL game. Another example is Florida Panthers defenseman Ed Jovanovski, who also had the surgery as well. Following around a year of rehab, Jovanovski attempted to return to normality only to have his season cut short after only being able to play 37 more games. Even though the surgery seemingly allows for players to live a normal day-to-day life, there's not many cases in where they made a successful return to play. And while Washington is hopeful that he'll eventually return, the painful truth just may be that he never will. Backstrom, who is on injury reserve at the present time, has 3 more seasons remaining on his deal that expires in 2025.